News Talk 730 AM and 95.3 FM welcomes you to D&D's Meet the Candidates Hour, a full hour of interviewing a candidate running for local office, learning what he or she is all about and what they have to offer if elected. Now, here are your hosts, Don Elwell and Dan Andrews.
All right, Don Elwell, Dan Andrews, D&D Live. We are here for a flawlessly, technically perfect hour of Meet the Candidates series. This, of course, is our final interview in the series. Mr. Andrews, how you doing, sir?
I'm great. Glad to be here.
Very good. And we want to welcome our very special guest running for Superintendent of Schools. Chris Doty is here as well. Mr. Doty, how are you this morning?
I'm blessed more than I deserve, my friend, and I'm very thankful to be here.
Oh, very good. Glad to see you here. Of course, we just saw you last night. It was a late evening as you did the debate on what's happening in Highlands County, Florida, on their live stream. So I know you guys are, all the candidates are probably kind of debated out, so to speak, and forumed out a little bit.
Well, I would say this. It definitely was a wonderful experience. Very thankful for the Circes for hosting that and then pulling in an astonishing moderator team to be able to coordinate the questions.
Started kissing butt. What's going on now?
Started off with a little...
Okay, fine. I won't ask that hard
a little
question.
Heiny smooch. Okay, who's your favorite moderator team? I guess that... cross that one out. All right, got it. Very good. Well, it's good to have you here as well, sir. And what we got is of course, there's a lot of folks out there that are listening right now that probably haven't seen that debate. They didn't listen to us at the Caladium Festival. That was a lot of fun. We did the debate between yourself and Ms. Longshore down there in the nice, cool Caladium Festival. So let's have you first kind of introduce yourself and tell everybody why you're running for office. There is no time limit on these questions, but obviously, we'll get to as many as we can get to. Go ahead.
Well, so, my name is Chris Doty. I'm running for Superintendent of Schools here in Highlands County. I have been an educator for 31 years. I have been 30 and a half years here in Highlands, and then I was recruited down to Glades County to help in a school down there at Moorhaven Elementary. Prior to my service in education, I was in the United States Air Force. That was actually how I was able to go to college. I wasn't one of those families growing up where we had the money to do that, but the military provided the way and the opportunity. I've been married for 30 years this coming September, so actually just not too long from now, to my beautiful wife, Karen Doty, and who works in the school system. We have two sons, Trevor and Chase. Trevor is my oldest son. He's a nurse in St. Louis, works in neurology there and loves it at Barnes Jewish Hospital there. And my youngest son is Chase. He just finished his college football career and is actually starting his first day at Sebring Middle School teaching 7th grade math.
All right.
So super excited for him on that.
Doesn't fall too far from the tree, does it?
Yeah, exactly.
So, the idea of serving is always been a big part of our lives as a family. And so I'm very, very thankful that is what my sons have chose to do. All of us graduated here in Highlands County. My wife from Lake Placid High School and myself and my two sons from Sebring High School. Back in 2002, I was nominated for Champion for Children, then again in 2010 and again in 2017, where I was awarded that very, very prestigious honor of being the Champion for Children. And I said this last night, and I'll say it again, and this gentleman is not to be referred to as kissing up to my wife. But next to marrying my wife and my sons being born, one of the greatest honors in my career.
Very nice. Very good.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to dive in and start asking you some hard questions.
Hard question.
Yeah,
All right. Go ahead.
Sure. If you could change one decision you made in your career, what comes to mind first and foremost? If you had the opportunity to look back and make a change, what would it be?
I would say that there's a number of things you would, you look back on a 31-year career and you say, what would you change? I can think back to my younger self in terms of how I approached my career and I would say that if I could go back and approach teaching, particularly how I may have handled a discipline issue with a child, an interaction with a parent, those kinds of things. At the beginning of my career, obviously I didn't have the wisdom and experience and that I have now. And so my older self would go back and tell my younger self to be more patient and to listen more than you speak. That's why God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen more and talk less. And so I would say that would probably be the thing I would want to go back and change is, that I listened a little bit more and I paid a little bit more attention at that moment with that child, and instead of rushing maybe to get it solved, instead of being action oriented and solving, and not that that's not important, but just maybe taking the time necessary to work through those steps more.
And along those lines, in that career, 31 years, I think you said, right?
Yes,
31
sir.
years.
Yes, sir.
Did you find that you had a mentor early in and who you aspired to be like, or somebody that you in the teaching or school system that you really aspired to be like and mentored you?
So that is a fantastic question, and hopefully you guys will.
That's what I do here.
You
Connie is just
you did it.
smooching you hard. Go ahead.
So I will say that I've got a couple, so I'm going to need a little longer than maybe what you had on the segment. But
Go ahead.
I will tell you that I was in the Air Force, and I was overseas at the time, and there was a gentleman who was a teacher at Sebring High School. His name was John Howard. Mr. Howard taught English. He had a very reverent voice when he read and stuff like that, and he just made an impact. Not just on me, but on lots of kids, and here in Highlands County at Sebring High School. So I'm overseas. I'm taking college English. I'm sitting in a phone booth in England, pumping coins in to talk to him because I'm now taking college English and I needed help. So I called him. He's on the phone with me. I think I was pumping coins in there for about close to an hour. And he's like, what's the number at where you're at? And I said H, and I called him H. We never called him Mr. Howard. I said H. I said, I'll call you back whenever you're free. I said, I just appreciate your help. He said, if you don't tell me the number, I'm going to hang up. And so I, of course, told him the number. He said, stay there, do not leave. He turned around and called me. He was probably on the phone with me for another hour and a half. Now, I want to be clear. I'm halfway around the world. Mm-hmm. Okay? I am not his student anymore. I am a grown, I wouldn't say the most mature man in the world, but I was a grown man at the time and no longer a student at Sebring High School. And he took his own time, his own money, to help me.
Probably wasn't a cheap call back then.
Was not a cheap call.
No.
And to help me to get through that. And his help was absolutely invaluable to me. So I will say then I come back, go to college, do all of that, and I end up actually working with him. He's a teacher and I'm a teacher, and we worked together. He was at the district office at the time and he was coming in. He got to actually watch me progress in my career all the way to being a principal. That is what I've always aspired to be able to do, is for my students to know that just because they have transcended out of our K-12 does not mean that they're no longer our students. And so that those relationships that we build with kids are so terribly important. That's why Dr. James Comer says that no significant learning takes place without a significant relationship. And so we have to be that relationship. So the second person I will tell you that had absolutely a profound impact on me was when I was an assistant principal. And there were two, actually. Dr. Demery was the principal of Cracker Trail. He is now deceased, very sadly, but had a huge impact on so many educators in this community. But Dr. Demery, when I worked for him, and then I was transferred by Mr. Cox to Sebring Middle School, where I had the opportunity to work with Sandy Whidden. And Sandy Whidden and I were a very dynamic team. We were able to work very, very closely together. And I learned so much from her about how to impact the culture of a school in a positive way.
Very good. Okay, excellent. Well, that was a good story there. That was in having talked to you a couple times before these different debates and such. It was the first time we got a chance there. So, good question, Dan. Way to go, buddy.
That's what I do.
That's what you do, exactly. Of course, we were talking with Chris Doty, candidate for superintendent of schools. Early voting started today, as in just moments ago, and will continue on for the next 10 days or so. And of course, Election Day, August 20th. So you got the opportunity to learn a little bit more about Mr. Doty as the D&D Live Meet the Candidate series continues. Don Elwell, Dan Andrews, D&D Live Meet the Candidates series, of course, with candidate for superintendent of schools, Mr. Chris Doty. Chris, we appreciate you being here. Certainly good thing to have you here so bright and early. I know you probably would be out there waving signs if you weren't here right now. You probably have that planned for the majority of the rest of the day, I would think.
I would think either waving signs or doing something to inspire people to come and vote.
Very good. Yep. Well, enjoy the air conditioning while it lasts, because there's none out there in the sign waving world. But here's a question, and I know you've been asked this one before, but it's a good one to get out there, because a lot of folks are looking at you versus your opponent. And of course, what do you consider to be the biggest difference between yourself and the opponent? What are the characteristics that you would say that would tip people to lean towards yourself versus towards your opponent?
Well, I would say that you're going to have a couple of things to consider, and so when you look at the opponent, there's been experience and those types of things have been talked about. But I want to be clear that those experiences were not actually had until she was in the position. That being said, I will say that for my end, I have been a high-performing principal for many, many, many years for this district, for Glades County. And so moving, school data and impacting the culture of learning for students, those things have been done with boots on the ground and working hand-in-hand with folks to make that happen. I, as a superintendent, would think that is what the primary role should be, to work very, very closely with our administrators and our leadership teams to be able to move their school data in similar fashions. We have amazing people on this. I almost said on this campus. So sorry, I was slipping in my principal, but I mean in this county, we have dedicated professionals. We have people who have hearts for kids. We have what we need. What we just need to be able to do is provide the type of support that each school is going to need. And let's be clear, I've been in all three communities. They are different needs in each of our communities here in Highlands County. So Avon Park has a different need than Lake Placid and has a different need than Sebring. The school sizes are different. The community, some of the values are even a little bit different, and some of the demographics are different. So you really do have to address things with the idea that you have to approach it in the community that you're in and adjust to that idea so that you can impact the student culture and the culture for learning, as well as impacting data like attendance and discipline. And of course you want kids passing classes and getting credits and those types of things, but you have to make sure that you understand the dynamic in that community in order to impact that. And working with those teams, those conversations will happen and that support will then take place.
Very good. Okay, Mr. Andrews, your turn, sir.
Okay, so things haven't been perfectly smooth in this campaign cycle, and it's tough for you and it's tough for us. I mean, we're friends with everybody, right? And one of the things that I've never heard is anybody challenge your passion and love for the youth and children of our community. Exceptional. You've been awarded for those successes, but now we're moving into a cycle where you have to manage the people and teach the people to have that same passion, the same love for the youth and children. That is the one area that you seem to have been criticized because of some of those interactions with staff members in the past. So what would you like to share with the listening audience in relation to that, and how you will inspire and motivate all of those principals, assistant principals, not to mention you're going to have a complete new slate, most likely, of administration at the school board. So tell us and the listening audience how you're going to handle that. Because everybody knows your accolades with the children. So where are you going to go with the adult leaders?
Well, I think the first concept that has been implemented in the schools I've gone to is the idea that doing what's best for kids is the foundation of what we do. So if we're going to do what's best for kids, then what that means is we have to then set aside our individual preferences and those types of things so that we can do what's best for kids. Doing what's best for kids does mean that we're educating them, that we're creating relationships with them, that we're creating environments where kids want to come and be educated. So I think when you look at that, it is going to be something that is going to take some folks moving out of their comfort zones. I think it's important to note that in those times where folks were having some concerns, obviously my passion for kids has never been in question, but sometimes that translating into staff, when you're going into schools that may have been a D for 2 years in a row. Lake Placid Middle School is a prime example. When they moved me to Lake Placid Middle School, I did not ask to be moved. I was moved because they had been a D for 2 years, and the state was going to come in and take it over, or they sent a high-performing principal. So they sent me. So I go into the school. When you go into that school, there's going to be some things where people don't feel comfortable because of just the idea of change. Okay, it might not be that I'm being I think I used the term, meanie pants, I think I used last night. So it's not that I'm necessarily doing that, but when you have a leader that's coming in and implementing some change, I think that when you don't want to change or you don't like that change, you'll push back. That being said, that doesn't mean that I'm being a bully or that I'm intimidating or anything of that nature. What it does mean is I'm being the principal of the school, which is my job. The job is to implement the types of things necessary, because if everything was going well, the school would not have been a D, right? So it's not that there weren't good teachers there. It's not that the right things couldn't be done, but for whatever reason, the leadership that was there prior wasn't able to lead that change and lead that to happen. So those things had to take place. It's not bullying and it's not intimidation. It's called leadership. And so, are there going to be some folks sometimes that don't agree? Yes. I'm sure in any business, whether it's Alan J or when it was at Legacy Bicycles or any of these businesses that you guys have been a part of, there were decisions that were made that employees may not have agreed with, but you were in charge of making that decision and you had to make it. That's part of the business world, and it is ultimately going to be part of the school system.
So the continuation on that is and this is coming from people that are sending us some questions.
Sure.
And one is along those lines, how are you going to handle those female subordinates that you're going to be in charge of that might feel uncomfortable working with you because of the allegations?
Well, I think that's the beauty of an allegation. Allegations actually means it's unproven. And so folks can say whatever they want to say, but let's be clear. I've coached girls volleyball for over 30 years. I actually think there's only one coach right now in Highlands County that I haven't actually coached, and she actually moved into our county. The other coach, I'm pretty sure I coached his daughter. So, I've never had that issue. But let's also be clear that, in the education world, if you went countrywide, I think it's 74.9% of all employees in schools are women. And I did not.
But you understand the question isn't related to your interaction with the kids.
No, I know. I'm getting there.
Okay.
Yeah. So what my point is 28 years, there was no complaints. There was no issues. I go to a school that required some turnaround, and then there was some allegations made. There's been no allegations made since in multiple environments here in Highlands County, and then again as a principal when I went to Glades County. As a matter of fact, glowing recommendations and letters of reference. So what I would say is for folks that have that feeling of being maybe discomfort or they've heard those types of things and they may feel that kind of discomfort, I would say that simply the case, when it comes around, will certainly bring out more details and facts.
Okay.
All right. Very good. Of course, we're talking with Chris Doty, candidate for superintendent of schools. He's got a big election coming up on August 20th, as do several other people here in Highlands County. And we've got some more questions, including, again, more tough ones. We got there's a big old elephant in the room, and we're going to try to see if we can get down to the bottom of it and let people know exactly where things stand here. And we got some more tough listener questions as well, as D&D Live Meet the Candidate series continues in just a minute. Don Elwell, Dan Andrews, Meet the Candidate series with Chris Doty, Superintendent of Schools candidate. Oh, man, Chris. Here comes the one, if you will. And it's just introducing this fact. Dan may even have more questions about it. And, of course, we kind of touched on it a little bit before we went to break. There's this massive investigation thing going on and such. And I've read the report. And not front to back, but I've had like 3 or 4 people send me the reports, copies of it and such, because it's public. But if you would summarize what was alleged, where do we stand, what options were you given, where do we stand, that whole thing, and where are we today?
Okay, so some of this I can obviously address, and some of it I'll have to be a little more subdued with. What I will tell you,
it's an active
right
investigation,
right.
If you will. Yeah.
So what I will tell you is this: there's a process that you go through, and so I entered into an informal negotiation process with the state. The state decided to first they wanted to dump a whole lot of consequences because that's what they wanted to do. My attorney and I, we responded, letters from the superintendent and my staff down there in Glades, they responded. All of a sudden, lots of the stuff was removed immediately. There was one item that was a non-negotiable for me, and I talked about it last night, and it was a DEI course that was proposed by the attorney for the FLDOE. So that particular class was a college level course in women's and gender studies. I refused to take it. It's for a couple of reasons. Number one, it goes against my faith. The Bible is very clear about what a man is and what a woman is and so forth. And, it's also very clear about men wearing women's clothes, women wearing men's clothes. The Bible is very clear about that. So when I entered into that negotiation, I told them I wouldn't take that course. I said it also didn't have anything to do with the case. So when that came up recently in this campaign, it was supposedly that would never happen. Well, I read the actual emails and posted it on my campaign page so that everybody can see it. Additionally, in this process, it was reported to me by my attorney that a candidate had called up to DOE and let them know I was running in the superintendent race. And so when that happened, that's when this opened up to the hearing process. So now that the hearing process is going forward, it's a matter of providing the information, and the attorneys will start to have their discussions about that evidence.
Okay.
Do you currently hold a teaching certificate in Highlands County?
So I sent, my attorney sent an email to the FLDOE attorney and saying that I would voluntarily relinquish it in order to resolve the issue. Because at that point, when I did that, I had no intention on running for superintendent. In addition, there's no reason for me to keep it. I was retiring. Then when this whole issue of running for superintendent came up, I knew I didn't need one to run for superintendent. So it wasn't even an issue. I had gone ahead, and then I entered into a couple of emails with my attorney. Hey, have you heard anything back from the state? And so, because when you sit there and you do this for, almost 3 years, it does wear you down. You get to a point where you're, kind of over it.
Sure.
And which is kind of where I was at, and I was at a point where I was ready to just move on. And so anyway, so we're at the hearing stage, and so at the hearing stage, what will happen is we'll now be able to take depositions. We'll be able to actually have my witnesses actually spoken to, and now that I was able to get an actual look at what the allegations were after all of this had taken place, I'd submitted things, answered questions from or answered the statements, or was able to respond to statements rather that were presented to me by the state, but never once did anybody actually speak to me.
Okay, so let me take it back just a little bit, because one thing we didn't talk about is what were the actual allegations. And again, these are not criminal charges. This is an administrative hearing, if I'm correct. So the charges were something along the lines of, I believe there was inappropriate comments, jokes made. I think there was unwanted touching of some sort, or whatever. I think what exactly what is being alleged here?
So those things are being alleged.
Okay.
But we've yet to actually find out who the actual victims are.
Okay.
So we're waiting to find that information out, because we don't even have victims to attach it to.
Okay, so those are the things that were alleged, and then I saw in the investigator's report a couple of people are alleging this. Obviously, the names are all blacked out, which is redacted, which is how it's supposed to be. And then I also saw that there were several other witnesses that said, no, I've worked with them for years and everything's fine. So I saw that both those things are in there, but because of those allegations, that's why this is progressing further. So again, to answer Dan's question, you still do currently have the teaching certificate, correct? You're still a licensed or certified teacher at this point.
I have not been notified that they have taken it when I relinquished it, so I'm assuming yes. My attorney hasn't told me that either.
So you've offered it, but it's not yet been
correct.
You've not been told.
Technically, my educator certificate is renewed in 2025.
Okay, so you're good for another year or so if nothing else happens.
June of 25. Yeah,
I got you. Okay.
So if you've offered to relinquish it, what's the point in having a hearing?
I don't disagree. I don't even know why they would have the hearing, other than the idea that
because it's administrative,
right? So when I offered to relinquish it, which came after the attorneys saying that we were going to, the idea we'd go to a hearing, I just said, well, I'll just relinquish it and we'll be done. And then and that's why I retired, and I went through the whole process, because quite honestly, you've got to understand the enormity in terms of fighting a David versus Goliath idea. And so, to have the financial resources to try and defend yourself against the state, it's a pretty large undertaking. That being said, I had a plan, and I planned on walking away from it, and then God's plan is very, very different, and I'm okay with walking by faith, and this is where we're at.
Yeah, and I'm seeing text messages coming across right now from people that, again, are on both sides of this issue. And again, you mentioned before, it's a 31-year career. These allegations are coming up primarily over one time period a few years ago, 3 years ago or so, correct?
Correct.
About 3 years ago or so.
Correct.
I'm seeing one here that said that this person knows somebody that worked for him for at least 10 years and has direct knowledge of never, ever felt uncomfortable around you. So, I mean, I don't, I'm assuming this is, I can see the person's name, so it's not, last name's not Doty, so it's not a family member. But it is something to keep an eye on, obviously, as this goes forward. So again, I think you were originally, or at least what I heard, you were given like a few different options. One of them was to relinquish the certificate. And so now you've offered to do that. And not heard anything more on that, and yet this is still continuing on with an administrative hearing scheduled for late October, I believe.
It is, yes.
Okay, October 23rd, 24th, somewhere in that range there, I think.
Right.
And so at that, then you'll be able to, I guess, have more of a hearing in which you're getting out your side and
correct,
their side, and all that fun stuff. I don't. Now, if you were to win, let's say on August 20th, which of course is going to be way before the hearing in October, it doesn't sound like would have any direct effect on that, or would it?
Well, I can tell you that there are a lot of armchair quarterbacks on this one. and what they think and what they have read and different things of that nature. I can tell you that as of right now, my attorney doesn't see that as an issue. More importantly, the state wasn't even looking to do anything with my certificate when they made their offer to me, other than I didn't want to accept the DEI course. And so at that point, I would have continued as a principal and would have been able to continue doing everything I was doing down in Glades County should I have chosen to. That being said, because I am not going to denounce my faith to keep my job, I chose to honor God, and I will continue to do that with my choice. And so with that being said, where we're at now is you do not need an educator certificate to be a superintendent. And the interpretation from my current attorney and also another attorney who is very well connected in Tallahassee with these types of matters do not see it as an issue.
So, and this is the last question. I'm going to let Dan actually have a voice on this one, but shortly. I apologize for taking this one, but it just seems to me that if you're willing to give up the certificate, which to me is kind of an important thing to give up and to volunteer to relinquish, the DEI course, whether you agreed with it fundamentally or not, or what is it, gender studies, what was it again?
Women's and gender studies.
Women's and gender studies. So, I don't know how long the course like that would be. I would think it's probably like a day-long kind of thing or something like that. Or
no, it's a full college course. It's a full semester.
Oh, it's a full semester. Okay, all right, it's a little bit more than that. All right, because I was going to say I would just, why would you just not simply just take the course, get past the course and then move on? That would be my other part of it is and I see it's a little bit more of a commitment than that, but I still think that at some particular point, if you're wanting it to kind of get past it, move past it, let's move forward, then maybe that was in hindsight, would that be something that you would still consider possibly doing, or no?
No.
Not at all. Okay. All right. Dan, you got the next question, sir.
Okay. So let's talk about, if elected, how you will manage the school system. What will your upper level executive management team look like? Because it's clear that there will be certain people that won't be there. So what will that structure look like for a Chris Doty superintendent administration?
So I would say that the biggest piece that I think is important is at every school that I've been at, in every community that I've been at, the door's always been open. And so the idea is, with an open door, folks can come in and they can talk, and it's always been that type of environment, and it has always been very beneficial. It's why I normally eat lunch in my office. I don't normally eat with people. That actually was the first time I had ever done it at Avon Park Middle School. Prior to that, all my other schools will tell you I just stayed in my office by myself. I'd answer email, and then when people came in during their lunchtime, that was the pop-ins and the opportunities to have conversation with my staff. So what does it look like at the district office? Well, obviously, if I'm elected, then we know that the only current change at the district office would be the difference in who's superintendent. From that point, every other
sure?
every other person in that environment after that, we would look at those positions and how they're impacting education for our district. And again, I've said we're going to make decisions based on doing what's best for kids. And so every position that we're going to look at, we're going to evaluate, is that position doing what's best for kids? If it's not, then we're going to rethink it, because that position then needs to be redesigned. The monies may need to be reallocated. They need to be relooked at so that we can impact the data in our schools in a more positive way and help our staffs in the schools. That is literally our job. The district office is supposed to be a support network and system for the building level teachers, for the building level administrators, and for their teams. And that is where it's supposed to be. And so when we're having to bring in the state to lead those changes, then I do start to ask, what is the impact of the people who were already in positions to lead those changes? And so would I have questions about that? Absolutely. And should. We're 56 out of 67 districts in the state. There's great work happening. There's amazing teachers in our district, amazing administrators, principals, so forth. There's no reason that we need to go searching high and low for all kinds of new folks. We need to support the ones we have. And believe it or not, if you build it, they will come.
Go ahead.
So last question on that, and this was sent to me. Will Donald Ridgway be part of your management team at the school board office?
Would he be a part of the management team at the school board office?
Or have you made a commitment to
No, I haven't made a commitment to anybody in that respect. What I would say is that, Donald Ridgway is an assistant principal at Seabury High School. By all accounts, what I've heard, he's doing a good job. I do still have kids that I know that are in the school system. They do seem to really like Mr. Ridgway. As far as his being a candidate and running for office, I think that is his right to be able to do that, just like it is mine and obviously the incumbent. So I would say that everybody has the right to do those kinds of things. You have the right to exercise that ability to vote and have an opinion. You probably should, maybe, structure your thoughts so that they aren't quite so hateful and dark. Not that Mr. Ridgway did that. I'm not saying he did, but there have been some in this campaign that have done that. And, it is concerning that folks are reaching to those kinds of depths and really just almost fear-mongering, trying to stoke the fires of fear. And that part's unfortunate.
Chris Doty, candidate for superintendent of schools. Man, Dan, why are these not 3 or 4 hour interviews? I swear we could easily. I mean, we're already 3/4 way through.
Chris doesn't want it to be.
That's a good point. Chris doesn't want it. That's a good point. Right? He's like, no, Thursday, a half hour would have been good. Anyway, so we will cover some more questions, and maybe a light question at the end too, as we complete the interview here. Meet the Candidate Series, issue number 9 with candidate Chris Doty, superintendent of schools for Highlands County. Don Elwell, Dan Andrews, Meet the Candidate Series with Chris Doty, candidate for Highlands County Superintendent of Schools. All right, Mr. Doty, got another question for you. As we all know, and you mentioned this just a minute ago, the grades came out for our district and for the entire state. I think we ranked 55th or 56th. I think there was an incomplete at the time. I don't know where we ended up, but it was 55th. Might have been as low as 56th out of 67 schools, which is an increase from the 60th or so that we were, I think, last year. But we're still in the bottom 20% and nowhere near where we kind of, I know, would like to be. What is your take on that, and how do we get in that top half? How do we
Sure.
start making that forward progress quickly?
So I will tell you that I've had the opportunity to work in a variety of our communities and schools when they had issues, because I was moved there by the superintendent, but actually several superintendents. So I will tell you that working when the state comes into your county is a big part of it. I had the opportunity to talk to a principal, and this was what she said. I said, hey, I just wanted to ask you, did the work you did with the Bureau of School Improvement help y'all? This is her response. Absolutely. The state taught me more than I could have ever learned on my own. I had 2 amazing mentors from the Bureau of School Improvement. She said BSI. That pushed me. So what does that mean? That means this. That means that if we give support to our principals, and this happens to be a principal whose school grade went to a B, she simply said that was invaluable to have that type of support. So really what she just said is, with support, and with the right support, I can do these things. And that is what we're supposed to do. And so as a district, in order to impact our schools in the right way, we need to be there with them working hand in hand and create a structure and a team to be able to do that.
Very good. Dan?
Okay, so if it were not for the allegations and how the district handled those allegations, would you be running for superintendent of schools? And what happened? Because it seemed like you and the administration had a really good relationship until there was a breaking point.
So I that's a great question. I wish I had an answer to it. I absolutely loved what I have done in our community as an administrator. I would love to continue to impact kids. It's something that I think I have done in my entire career. I had no intentions on running for superintendent. It was something where my wife and I pray before we go to bed every night. And I ask God for the wisdom and discernment to recognize the next door that he wants me to serve, and that I can see it and then walk through it. And so this is where we're at today. And this is a process where I'm walking by faith. At the end of this, if I am not the person that is elected, then there'll be another door that God will open for me, and I'll walk through it and serve in whatever capacity he needs me to serve. And that's what walking by faith means.
So is it fair to say that you had a very good relationship with administration up until that point of the allegations and how they handled the investigation?
I can tell you that how the investigation was handled here in Highlands County. I can tell you that there was a number of things that took place that should not have, that have been noted not only by myself, but former HR director here in Highlands County noted several issues. There is issues where they had an attorney review my complaint, and it just happened to be the same attorney that they used to actually do my original investigation. So she essentially reviewed her own work and said there wasn't a problem.
Very good. And a listener question, actually a couple of listeners had this one question. What is your feeling about the IB program for Sebring High School? And if elected as superintendent, would you continue the IB program at Sebring High School?
I think that's a great question. I've heard that question a couple of times. I want you guys to understand that both my sons participated in advanced academics and were beneficiaries of the IB and the accelerated program. My son Trevor is an IB certificate recipient. He was 10th in his class when he graduated, and I think he graduated with 3 certificates in his IB courses. And then my son Chase he actually graduated with his associate's degree here at South Florida State College before he actually graduated from high school. So both of my sons benefited from that, and as well as other programs at Sebring High School, sports and things like that. But the IB program provides a very particular type of program for a very particular group of kids. And if we're going to do what's best for kids, we've got to make sure that we provide these programs to make sure all of our kids have opportunities. And that has been my feeling all along. And so we provided advanced academics at every school I've been at. We've made sure that those programs were representative of our school demographic, to make sure that all children have the opportunity to benefit from advanced academics.
And really quickly, and I'm going to turn it over to Dan for the last question or so. IB, by the way, stands for the International Baccalaureate Program, if I'm not mistaken,
yes,
correct?
Sir.
Yes, I
Yes, sir.
apologize. I've thrown out those acronyms again. But anyway, I know that I've heard some radio commercials that you've done on these fine radio stations about one, I think, from your wife, who surprisingly is in your corner, unlike my wife usually. But anyway, no, that's good that you've got that. And then, of course, one also, it sounds like, I think, from Vivian Waldron. Now, she was the HR director, correct?
She was.
And she was the HR director during this time period that these allegations are, or no?
She was not. She had only been retired for a very short time.
I gotcha.
And had very, very relevant knowledge in the process.
Oh, she did. Okay. But she's doing commercials on your behalf at this point.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Very good. So obviously, had there been things that she had seen directly, then she probably would not be doing these commercials, I would think.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And then do you know if she's at all involved in these, in the reports or in the administrative hearing at all, or no?
At this point, I don't know exactly where that's going to be going in terms of the administrative hearing, but I can tell you that she has very similarly read all of the reports and seen those things and noticed quite a few problems with the district's handling of the process.
Okay, very
All
good.
right, we're going to have to bang this out real quick. So, health and sex education, at what grade level do you think that should be included in the curriculum, and how will you address that moving forward?
So I will tell you that. Do I think it is very important for for kids in elementary to know their body parts and where their eyes are, their ears, their nose, their legs, and stuff? Absolutely. And when you get into the middle school, do you need to know the reproductive system, the digestive system, the skeletal system, and so on? Absolutely, you need to know these things. When you get into high school, do you dive into, and we actually do it at the middle school level as well, with dissections and getting a little more deeper into those things? Absolutely. But the process of wisdom, knowledge, experience needs to be very much looked at before we start introducing those things. And do we need to have concepts of sex being taught to elementary students? No. Do we need to have concepts of sex being taught to middle school students? No. That's why the resilience education that is being brought in, the resilience program, is so important, because what we should be doing is talking to kids about abstinence, not about how to have sex safely.
Okay, and Mr. Doty, we got about 1 minute or so for a wrap-up, if you will. Just tell people again why they should vote for you.
So I would say that my career has always been about what's doing best for kids. The task has always been very, very simple. You want to hire an amazing group of individuals who have a heart for kids. And once you've done that, you can begin to change lives. I've done that in every community here in Highlands County. I've done it in Lake Placid, Sebring, and Avon Park. I have done it in Glades County as well, at Moore-Haven. It did not matter if it was an impoverished community. It didn't matter if it was affluent. These communities were able to have that type of situation come in. So I've been blessed to be able to do that. I will tell you, my experience has always been that you need to remember that relationships are a big part of that process, and no significant learning is going to take place without it. So building that culture in a school is how kids are going to learn. So that is why I'm here. I'm here to support our teachers, our current teachers, so that they have a place that they can come to and be proud of and feel safe and be able to do the job that we're asking them to do, which is impact student lives. That's why I'm asking you to vote for Chris Doty.
Very good. And they can contact you how?
Well, I have Facebook, campaign page on Facebook. I have a website as well, Elect Chris Doty. And then on the many mailers and so forth that I've sent, my my email address, as well as my phone number, those are actually my actual numbers. I had a lady call me. She said, "You answered your own phone." I said, "It's my number."
Yeah.
So that's why I'm answering it.
All right.
And so they can call me, and I do my best to get back to folks. I generally, right now it's pretty busy during the day, so
Sure.
I do it in the evenings, but I try to get back pretty quickly.
All right. So what's that number? Go ahead. Put it out there. No.
8675309.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Jenny. Okay. So, all right. So very good. Again, Chris Doty running for Canada, for Highlands County Superintendent of Schools. We certainly appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. D&D Live, Dan Andrews and Don Elwell. We've got, of course, the big debate tomorrow between Donna Howerton and Lauren Hartzell Bush running for school district number 2.